Hello and welcome back to a very special edition of the Base on Balls podcast here at the Johnny Lee Memorial League. The trade deadline has come and gone, and we're here to break things down this week on this episode. I am your host for today, John Height, joined alongside by Bracton and Paul. So before we get into the matchups and all the trades, I'll start with you, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's coming down to it. Last week, my team played really well, but couldn't get the W. And it sets up a pretty big matchup this week with Bracton, winner likely getting that 7 seed. So, I'm excited. We'll get into it. We'll talk about it, but I'm excited.
Good to hear. And Bracton, how are you?
Another close loss for me this week, but excited for this upcoming week as it is a win-and-in scenario for me. I would clinch the 7 seed with a win against Paul, so all hands on deck.
All right, so let's now go straight into last week's matchups. It was week number 17, which I spent a little bit of time on each one, but still plenty to talk about. We're going to start with Cody versus Paul. So the Bowling Green Hot Rods took down the Norfolk Tides 861 to 718. Paul, I'll let you have the stand first.
Yeah, so tough one for me. My bats really came to play 417. And my arms really came to play too, over 300, just barely, but still got it. So it's tough to lose when your team is seemingly firing on all cylinders. As we kind of mentioned in the pod last week, my team underperformed, and I believe it was you or somebody had said, well, that means that you still have a good team, you can still win. And so putting out that performance this week and still losing, it's tough, but at least I lost to, in my mind, a top 2 or 3 roster in this league. So it's not as bad, but still, rather I get the win there, obviously. So I had some really good performances. I had a 50-point start out of Andrew Heaney, which was very helpful. My guys like Julio Rodriguez, Ian Happ, they played really well, but it's tough to go against Cody when he's dropping 90 from Cody Bellinger. My guy Gunnar Henderson, 65. His pitchers went crazy, 59 out of George Kirby. So it's tough. Obviously, Cody's team is really good and will be a problem in the playoffs.
And Bracton, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, nothing much else to add. Just Paul mentioned some of the notable performances and wanted to point out that Cody's relief pitching did pretty well too. And I mean, but actually both people's relief pitching did pretty well. So that's going to be a big factor here for playoff matchups and upcoming chase battles and everything is who's going to get the better stream relievers. And that's something I'll be certainly paying attention to, even though not every reliever used here with streams, a lot were. So that's a dynamic that has certainly been interesting all year, but especially now coming down to the wire. So,
yeah, definitely interesting to look at. I mean, on Cody's side, he's had a guy like Jordan Hicks gave him 20. Obviously, the closers, Devin Williams has been lights out lately. Camilo Duvall has been Camilo Duvall. I know Clase got suspended in that whole Tim Anderson scuffle. I think it's only for a game or two. But yeah, I mean, big time performances from him. Saw Tyler Glasnow had a good performance before I think, got a little bit hurt. Sandy might be back. He had about 50 points this week. So obviously, the Hot Rod showed up in terms of the Tides as well. Still a good performance. 700 points is a solid number. You talk about relief pitching. The thing about Paul's team I love is even guys like Sean Manaya and Shintaro Fujinami are two, big guys, especially Manaya. Fujinami's really carved out a good role with the Orioles, which I know is a win-win for you, Paul. So they're the type of guys that maybe could decide a playoff matchup if the offense is close. And obviously, the pitching performance as well. Usually, I think a little more than 300 usually. So, but the bats still at 400. But good win for Cody. Paul's going to look to stay alive this week against Bracton. And speaking of Bracton, let's talk about the Larks and the Tampa Tar Ponies. Jaime took down Bracton in a very close matchup, 625 to 559. Bracton, you have the floor.
well, it was closer than I thought it was going to be for a while, for pretty much the whole week. I think I actually had a lead going into Saturday morning, so I was happy with where it was for the majority of the matchup, but when my top bats are only getting me 30 points each, that's not going to cut it. When guys like Freddie Freeman are dropping 89 and Ronald Acuna 72, Bryce Harper 53, like his bat scored 453 points, mine scored 278, and I won the pitching battle 281 to 172 despite him going over on starts. So I mean, the relief pitching aspect that I mentioned was at play for me here. I did not have a negative relief appearance, which was cool, but I had 3 negative starts from Bryce Elder, Tyler McGill, and Josiah Gray. So they've got to be better against Paul this week, but there were definitely some positive signs. Dane Dunning, 51 points. He's got a quality start tonight, too, as we're recording this. Nestor Cortez is back with a 24 piece in 4 innings. So that made me pretty happy to see, and I definitely made some deals that we're going to be talking about. So I like where my team's at this week in a win-and-in situation, but the Bats have got to do better than 30 points each. I mean, Vlad got 29, Ellie De La Cruz 30, TJ Friedel 31, Randy Arozarena 24, Volpe 30. Like, that's just not going to cut it. We got to do better on the bats, but we'll see how it goes this week. But so far so good after looking at tonight.
And Paul, what did you think?
Yeah, it was a standard week, I think, for Jaime with 453 from the bats and then almost nothing from his arms. I mean, that's just what he's been doing. Jordan Romano was on the injured list all week, and he started every day for him. I'm not sure. I know what that means, but it doesn't need to be discussed. But anyway, for Bracton, he said it all. He made a lot of moves in this past week that we'll talk about a few of them, but his team looks a little bit different than the team that he played with last week, and we'll see if it's good enough to beat me and get him into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely a very close matchup on Jaime's. I mean, Freddie Freeman with 90, like you mentioned before, Bobby Witt with another 60 piece. The offense was there. Bracton, I think a part of your team that's, I think, struggled that week that it might have made the difference is only 278 points from the bats. Like you mentioned, some of those guys not really stepping up. There's been a lot of weeks where your offense kept you in games, so I think the offense was a little bit better. I think could have easily been a different story compared to it, but you already mentioned a lot of the big-time performances from your side, and I mean, I keep thinking every time you mention Tariq Schoolball, I always check what he's doing, and he had another 27 piece in a short start against I think it was Tampa actually, or maybe it wasn't or wasn't. But anyway, Jaime gets the win. He moves on, and we'll see what happens with the Larks and the Tides this week. Let's now head to my matchup, me versus the Tita Man. The Hartford Yard Goats took down the Nashville Sound 998 to 670. And Paul, I'll let you go first. I'll let both you guys go first before I go, but Paul, you can lead us off.
Yeah, I mean, just yet another crazy week put out by the Hartford Yard Goats. The weekly update for Shohei Ohtani, only 67 points. Pretty interesting. Maybe he's declining. Maybe he is going to be dropped at some point. But yeah, obviously the big story in this matchup was the no hitter thrown by Framber Valdez. That's the second no hitter thrown this season, and the fun fact there is both of them were against Tita. That's not so fun for Tita, I'm sure, but obviously, even without that, I think John Haidt, you still would have had a decent advantage over Tita. Obviously, a closer matchup, but your team is just firing on all cylinders. The bullpen actually wasn't as good as it has been this week, but still really solid. And as for Tita, when you're over 300 points in pitching and hitting, it's hard to complain, and he was. So obviously, and his team looks different too. He was active at the deadline, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do after this loss. He's in the playoffs already, so it'll be interesting to see who he can match up with and what he can do.
Definitely. And Braxton, do you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Not particularly. You guys hit on, or Paul hit on a lot of what I was going to say. Just noticed that some relief pitchers went negative on both sides. I guess that's going to be my thing going forward. The rest of the way here is who can get the best stream relievers to complement their pitching. So got some good performances from some Burns and Gallen on 2 start weeks, which is good, and then obviously the no hitter. So, and then when you're getting 76 points from Mookie Betts, um, what do you call it? 79 from Simeon and 79 for Olson. That's pretty legit. So, yeah, Tita, like we said, made a lot of moves, and I'm looking forward to talking about those. But shout out Ryan McMahon, 64 points. That was a pretty good performance for him. So we'll see what else Tita has up his sleeve going up for the rest of the year. But the team looks a lot different and a lot better. So good for him. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. And I know how frustrated Tito was with the freaking no-hitter. But, Paul, you kind of mentioned, I think I still would have won by at least a little bit. And Brack, you mentioned, guys like Burns and Gallen, and I got Max Fried back this week, gave me 43, and Cole at 39. I mean, my pitching was still there even outside of that. But obviously, love to see Framber, having 172 in 1 week. But, yeah, my relief pitching was bad. Paul Sewald, kind of Mickey. Bautista and Pressa didn't really get the opportunities that I thought they would. And on Tita's side, the offense, again, wasn't an issue for him. Had almost 400 points. I mean, guys like Adolis and Schwarber. McMahon has been a really good find for him as well. Cal Raleigh, who always just fucks me every time I play him. When I first Bry, Raleigh had like 3 home runs. He had 3 home runs this week with Tita. So definitely interesting to see him do that again. But yeah, I mean, Tita's team looks a lot different, and I'll save the rest of that for the deadline portion. And I'm excited that I clinched the one. Now I'm just going to be looking to see who I play in the playoffs in a few weeks. So it should be fun. Let's go on to the next matchup of the week. The biggest upset of the week. Huge victory for the Kannapolis Cannonball. Tomco took down the mighty Clearwater Beach Dogs, the arguably hottest team in the league. 8-17 to 6-19.
I wouldn't be calling them the mighty
one.
Clearwater Beach Dogs for long, man. I think that Ed's team is on the decline. I still stand by my prediction that that the Larks will win one or more playoff games than one of you two. So I think that's going to be. I think it's going to be.
No,
I think
it's not going to be me. It's going to be him then.
Looking at this, he dealt Paul Goldschmidt, which we'll mention briefly in a little bit. But I mean, Bo Bichette getting injured really screwed him, and I don't think he added a notable replacement at the deadline. So that'll be a pretty gaping hole going forward. Oh wait, no, he got Dansby, right? Didn't he? Yeah, never mind. Okay, never mind. I missed that. But -20 from Lucas Giolito. Ouch. -9 from Mitch Keller. Max Scherzer seems to be adjusting in pretty well, though. That's good. But yeah, man, Hendog got 137 points from his pitching and traded. What do you call it? Traded Andrew Abbott. So I don't know how that's going to work. You might have to call it G-Rod, but that doesn't look very good if he's trying to be really competitive this year. So Homko, props to him. 379 pitching points. Look at these relief pitchers. 49, 25, 52, and 14. I think that his relief pitchers outscored Hens all of Hens pitchers combined. So that's pretty interesting and a win. Look at 73 points from Johan Oviedo. Very interesting there. So just good stuff all around from Homko. Sucks that he wasn't in contention this year because he definitely has some good pieces. We've been hyping him up on the pod for pretty much the whole season, so it's unfortunate. Look forward to see what he does in the off season though, because there's definitely some pieces here.
And Paul, what did you think?
Yeah, you pretty much covered Hendog's team, Braxton. It's a couple weeks ago, I think all of us would have agreed that Hendog had probably the second best roster and the best chance to take down John Haidt. I don't think that's the case anymore. And I don't think he had a particularly great deadline day, moves that he made. Like you mentioned, trading Abbott and, losing Bo Bichette. So we'll see. We'll see with Hendog and what happens. But big props to Hamko this week. It's he has that roster and he has that record, but he's got some really nice upside arms here. I mean, Brian Bello, young, really good. Johan Oviedo, as you had mentioned. So there's some talent there, and obviously Yuri Perez, who just got called up, he didn't play super well today. But I mean, Brady Singer's back. He's got some young arms that next year he's going to be a team to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, Hamka, we've been talking about it every single week. Just so much bad luck for who he's been playing. And for the longest time, that issue, like you mentioned, has been the pitching. And boy, this week it was different. Almost 400 points. Brack, you mentioned the relief pitching. A guy I traded away, Andres Munoz. I knew he was going to take over that spot from Seawald eventually. It happened once they traded him. Already making the most of that. I think I got a lot for him, but still, I mean, it would have been a great reliever to probably keep at that point. In terms of Hen's team, I mean, yeah, just the offense was there. I mean, Juan Soto has looked unstoppable lately. Yordan Alvarez is getting hot. Gary Sanchez gave him 51 too as well. But yeah, the pitching, you guys, I think, hit on it pretty effectively. Just wasn't there this week. And we'll see what happens this week. He's already off to a slower start than usual. But congrats to Hamko for the win. Let's move on to the next matchup of the week. Another super tight matchup. This might have been the most competitive week yet, honestly, looking through all this. Bry and the Rocky Mountain Vibes took down the El Paso Chihuahuas 652 to 569. Paul, what did you see here?
Yeah, tough loss for Smell. Effectively, essentially ending his playoff chances. Which is tough because he was the week before he bought a lot. He went out, got Cease, who actually blew up on him, -23. He had some good performances too. Austin Gomber, good player. Freddie Peralta, he went crazy tonight. Actually, I think he had another 13 strikeout game tonight. But bullpen was decent. Got some over. I think no, just under 60 points from his bullpen. Still pretty good. But shout out Bry obviously in this matchup. He got a lot of, instead of more going for relievers, I think he just went as much, if not more, for one-day bats, like a Belt, Abreu, Massey. Like these guys only played in one day for him. And it's those little points that they got up pretty quick because the margin of victory here was 83 points. So, those kind of things can add up pretty quick, and obviously it made a difference for him. But obviously the usual suspects, Ozzy Albies, Rafael Devers, Matt McClain, those guys, stalwarts on his team and played pretty well. He didn't do anything like overly well, over 300 points for each, but no 400 point from his arms or bats. So just a really solid week, I think, from Bry, and another team clinched the playoffs already, and just waiting to see who he's going to play.
I mean, Paul said a lot of what I was going to say, but I mean, Bry got 63 points from his catchers, which is ridiculous. I mean, that just doesn't happen. And he made a big trade earlier in the week for Luis Robert, and he had 38 points for Bry this week. So picks it up. He seems to pick it up when people trade him. So that's kind of funny. Bry actually lost the hitting by 4 points, which is kind of crazy as well, but he made up for it in relief pitching. I mean, a couple big time starts too. Seth Lugo had 33, Logan Allen 28, Jack Flaherty his first start with the Orioles 38, and Justin Steele with 46 in a 2-start week. So good production from Bry. Bry made some interesting deadline moves, which we'll talk about here, but I'm liking the vibes a lot now. Like, if we're talking power rankings, I think Bry is a top 3 team in the league right now, and I don't think that that's a rough assessment either. I think Jamie and Hen are declining, and I think Bry is going to be up there to take that position as 3 behind John Haidt and Cody. So.
Definitely, just such an intriguing matchup, and I think I picked Smell last week. Usually I lean Bry most weeks, but I was wrong. I mean, Bry had a really good week. For whatchamacallit, what part of it? Yeah, I mean the bats for some of the guys that were able to step up. We talked about it. Ozzy Albies is just unbelievable. That Braves team is just a cheat code, despite what people are saying in the main chat. But yeah, I mean, Smell has been trying to go all in. We talked about it before. The Cease performance didn't help, but Bry was able to squeak away a win. And like you mentioned, I mean, Bry's really been etching themselves into that top caliber of the league. And if you're talking about in a playoff matchup where streaming is everything, that could decide a matchup. I mean, he's the best streamer there is. So anything can happen, and we'll see what Bry and Smo are going to do the rest of their respective seasons. Let's move on to the next matchup on the recap. I think we have two more left before we do the deals. Let's go to Connor and Chad, where the Dodgers took down the Ariel Assad 495 to 425.
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. You were talking about Connor and Chad, right? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I actually asked Chad for a lot of players on his team during this deadline season because he had some guys that really stood out to me. Ha-Sung Kim at 64 again. I mean, this dude, I think he picked him up off waivers earlier in the season, and now he's one of the highest WAR in the entire league, and just keeps putting up ridiculous numbers. So 64 for him. That was probably about the difference in this matchup. So Ha-Sung Kim was pretty good. Who else did he have? Kyle Bradish had 52 points and netted him a huge haul, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Brandon Pfaadt, I think you say his name, had his first really, really nice start of his career with 30. And again, relief pitching was pretty good, except for Brooks Raley. I mean, don't be streaming Mets relievers, but other than that, I think that again the relief pitching for Chad outscored Connor's entire pitching staff this week. But Connor made some really good deals too, which we're going to discuss. So I really like Connor's hitting though, 329, great week. James Outman 27. Bryce Terang, who nobody wanted 3 months ago, had 53 this week. So maybe some diamonds in the rough here for Connor. Josh Bell at 38 too. So stuff's working, but congrats to Chad.
And Paul.
Yeah, it's wild to me that Chad went under 300 with his bats and still won. But then you keep looking and you see only 96 from Connor's arms, and you kind of put two and two together. Obviously Connor still reworking that pitching staff, but his bats are actually really nice. And I mean, Braxton already highlighted a few. The one I'll re-highlight, Bryce Terang, former Tide, Brewers prospect, finally actually getting some decent playing time for the Brewers. Primarily at second base, but he's a top 100 prospect coming into this year, and so definitely a player that was very unwanted for most of the season, but found his way to Connor's roster, and if he can keep going, keep developing, a very nice snag for Connor. There was one, it was Bradish for Chad, which he then traded, but and I'll get into it more when we talk about that trade, but Bradish, a guy obviously for the Orioles that I've kind of been lower on, I think the most, but clearly, 52 points in a 2-start week, a very good performance, and only 26. So all in all, Chad got the win, good win. Connor obviously looking past this, but again, I really like a lot of pieces that he has with his bats, and a few more that he got this week.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, good win for Chad. I mean, I still can't get over how just valuable Ha-Sung Kim has become. I think he's like the 38th overall bat right now in our scoring. And yeah, being able to win under 300 points of offense is just insane. And I'm not going to even mention Kyle Bradish until we get to that part. But again, Connor, the offense, I'm just beefing up his offense. I'm talking about the Castellanos deal just a little bit as well. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Josh Bell was a big guy for me this week. And again, like the streaming game, he had some decent starts here and there from some of the streamers. But again, I think the pitching, he's still going to be reworking. And that'll definitely be a point of emphasis for him in the offseason. But we'll see, throughout the rest of the season, I think Connor's bats can help him get maybe one or two more wins depending on the opponent. And again, Chad does not need to win or lose or draw or anything. He's got all the picks, and that's, I'm sure, all he cares about. Let's go on to the next matchup. Actually, the last matchup of week number 17 here of the Johnny Lee Memorial League. It was Scott and Dave, where the Richmond Flying Squirrels took down the Rochester Red Wings 484 to 445. Paul, you can go first.
So I'm looking through here in this matchup, and Dave took the loss, but more than taking the loss, he took some pretty big hits this week with Chase Young breaking his thumb. Had 44 points before that, but probably out for the rest of the season, which, it better happen now than early in the season, I guess, since Dave's season's essentially over in terms of playoffs, at least. But it's interesting because he had a very top-heavy week. And when I say that, I mean he had 47 points from Anthony Santander, 73 out of Heimer Candelario. Those two players combined for 120 points, and he only had 282 batting points. So, almost half of his points just came from two players. And then the same thing in pitching. He had 72 out of Kyle Gibson, who had 2 starts this week. And for his total pitching, he had 163. So, almost half of his points came from one pitcher. So obviously he has decent talent. Now the question is, can he fill out that roster a little bit and build it up with role players that'll drop 30 points from the bat or 20, 30 points from on. But as for Scott, as for obviously the winner here, I harped on it last week and I'll harp on it again. He's got good young bats. Sal Frelick. Brett Baty got sent down today, but Tristan Casas, Francisco Alvarez, Joey Meneses had 25 this week, pretty good. Mountcastle has been one of the best hitters in baseball since he came back from his vertigo IL stint. But I mean, all in all, the pitching is still lacking a little bit, and he knows that. And obviously, will be his focus probably.
I'm
in
just
this
looking
offseason.
at both teams; they're littered with guys
And
I had, and they put up good numbers, so it's kind of a little frustrating. But I really do like what Paul was saying about Scott's bats. I mean, I traded him Sal Frelick. I really like Bryson Stott. I really like Tristan Casas. I really like Francisco Alvarez. I mean, I've been saying the same thing for a couple weeks with Scott's team, but really like where he's going there. I think he's going to have a really interesting offseason. He's been really patient this year and stuck to his plan, and just trying to get a bunch of young talent into his organization, and I feel like he's done that. So I'm really interested to see what he's going to do this offseason. And as for Dave, more guys I got rid of: Clark Schmidt, Kyle Gibson, Jamier Candelario, or I definitely botched that name. And then the two Tigers combined for 34 though, so not great. But I really hope we can revisit some of those trade conversations in the off season, Dave, because I do like those guys. But good week for Scott.
Yeah, good win for Scott. And the one thing I'll mention is I missed the one part you guys said. I'm not sure if you mentioned, just I can't believe how well CJ Abrams has really turned it around and really turned into a really good player on that Nationals team. Almost a 6-point per game bat. He had the 52 this week. He was a guy I kind of had my eye on, and then he started getting red hot, and then Scott obviously made him untouchable, and for good reason. Ryan Mountcastle as well as another guy we all had, I think, at one point had 70, and he's a guy I think that's starting to really turn it around. The Orioles as well, and then also on Dave's team, I mean, Candelario, 73. I know he was shopping him. Would have been interesting to see maybe if a contender got him this year, but only going to help Dave for potentially next year as well. So that wraps up, I believe, yes, all the matchups for week 17. Let's head to the deals. So me, Paul, and Bracton have went through all the deals that were made, and for time purposes, because obviously there was a lot, we kind of picked out our favorite ones that we're going to break down. All three of us give our opinions on. Obviously, just for time purposes, we're not unfortunately do every single trade, but we're trying our best to do just probably the biggest name ones and a couple other ones we just liked in there, just so we have a good basis of everything for the deadline. So let's start back on July 31st. We're going to go. The first major trade happened between Bracton and Cody, where Bracton got his red Jonathan India, two reds, and TJ Friedel, Emerson Hancock, and Jorbit Vivas, not Vivas,
Yeah,
Vivas.
so
And Cody
I've been
got
trying to
Nolan
get Jonathan
Gorman
India
and
back
Christopher
since I
Morel.
traded
Bracton,
him.
you can
Really,
talk about
and
your trade.
when Cody approached me about this 2-for-2 base deal with India and Friedel for Gorman and Morel, I was kind of hesitant because they were both struggling. But now I know that's because India was hurt, and he'll be coming back tomorrow, so I'll be using him tomorrow against Paul, which I'm excited to do. But what do you call it? It wasn't good enough for me to do a 2-for-2 at the time because I was concerned. But when he added in Emerson Hancock and Jorbit Vivas, I couldn't say no to that. Despite Christopher Morel's position eligibility, I felt like this was a good deal for me. And I later used a lot of these pieces in other deals. But TJ Friedel had an okay week for me and had a great day today. So I'm liking where this trade is looking early return wise. So yeah.
And Paul.
So it's noted that I'm not as high on Jonathan India as Bracton is, as a lot of people around here are. Although Gorman, I think, has kind of peaked a little bit. I know he's picked up in the last week or so, but just, a high strikeout guy, although so is Christopher Morel. He's a guy I like more. Probably my favorite player in this deal is Christopher Morel. But at the same time, I think that Bragton got pretty good value because Friedel has been insane this year. We'll see if he can keep it. If the Reds are playoff bound, which I know intend to be, they're going to need it out of both of India and Friedel. But Hancock is a pitcher that I've been bugging Cody for all year, basically. And then Jorbit Vivas, trending up. I don't know that he's the top 50, top 100 prospect that people are starting to think he is, but definitely not a worst. So all in all, I like this deal for Bracton. Although he did give up, in my opinion, the worst or the best player in the deal with Morel. But still, Bracton made out pretty well, I think.
Yeah, for me, I think I like this deal for both sides. Bracton gets his two reds. I was low on India to start the season. He's shown me a lot this year. And I think for his team, I think having him and getting back Hancock, who's a guy I think I let go too early. I forgot what I traded him for back in the day. Also, can't believe Jorbit Vivas is a player now. So still scary to think about. Getting that. Nolan Gorman. I think, Paul, you kind of mentioned he had that really hot stretch to start the season, cooled off mightily, started getting hot a little bit again. Honestly, once Cody got him again, started getting going. And then Morels obviously had a good season as well. I think it's pretty good value for both sides. Brandon got the two prospects in addition to the two bats, so I guess maybe a little bit his. But Nolan Gorman, is still super young, and Morel obviously as well, on a Cubs team that's trying to make the playoffs. So I don't have really a lot of complaints with this trade. I think both owners are pretty happy with that one. Let's move on to the next. I think we're going to skip like a day or two. The next big trade we need to discuss involved Bry and Cody. Bry got, at the time, Cedric Mullins. Cody got Cade Horton, Thomas Saggies, Angel Bastardo, and Gavin Cross. So we'll start with you, Paul. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, Cedric Mullins, obviously big-time Oriole, big-time outfielder. Has been battling groin injury this whole season. And obviously his primary weapon is speed. So whenever you're dealing with lower leg injury, or I guess upper leg injuries, but leg injuries, It's a little bit scary. He's 28. I'm not saying that's old, but it's not a 22-year-old. So those can tend to linger. He's supposedly going to be back. I believe it's either tomorrow or Wednesday for the Orioles. So we'll get a quick look to see. But I know Bry no longer has Mullins, so I won't give the impact, I guess, for Bry. But the package that Cody got with Horton, Sagisi, Bastardo, and Gavin Cross. Horton and Gavin Cross are top 100 prospects. So to get two plus, two mid to lower level prospects for one player, I mean, I like the value there, especially with Cade Horton, which I also know Cody no longer has. So this deal at the time, I would say I like it for both sides. Bry getting his outfielder that he wanted. And then Cody kind of loading up on prospects that he would eventually deal for players that would
I
help
like Cross and Horton.
And Bracken,
Not
so I guess just
huge
talk
on
more
the
about
other
what
two.
Cody got.
I,
and then
I
straight to your
don't know
next
a lot
thing after
about
that.
them, but I've always been a Gavin Cross fan, and Cade Horton, somebody I was interested in on Bry's team for a while. But Cedric Mullins is the big piece here, which we'll talk about in like 2 seconds. So.
Yep, let's go right into it. Bry traded with Bracken, I guess I don't know how long later, but looked like it was the same day. Bry got Luis Robert and Chad's 24 fourth. Bracken got Randy Arozarena, Cedric Mullins, Nestor Cortez, and the
Trading
Mickey
Luis
Mouse Brian
Robert was
De La
not
Cruz.
something I had in
Bracken,
mind
you can speak about
until I
side
talked
of
to
the deal now.
Bry, and he said he was willing to give me basically an entire outfield for Luis Robert. And I was not really thrilled about where my outfield was at with Robert and Friedel and pretty much nobody. I picked up Marcelo Ozuna, so I definitely felt like I needed more outfield. And when honestly, I was holding strong on getting some Reds prospects instead of Mullins, but he made that trade at 412, and the trade got done at 506 because he immediately dangled Mullins instead of the prospects. So I was like, oh, okay, you know what? That makes more sense than me going after somebody else that I can use this year. If he's going to give me a Rosarena and Mullins, that might be pretty good. And I've been after Nestor Cortez for a couple weeks. I felt like the Yankees were going to have a better second half. I know the wheels have kind of been falling off since that, but Nestor had a really good game against Houston earlier in the week. So I felt like Nestor Cortez is going to be a big piece of my team going forward for a playoff push. And then I just like Brian De La Cruz. I don't know why. He just Brian wanted an extra asset with that fourth, so I said I'd give him one for Brian De La Cruz there. Nothing too big. It was really going to be a 3-for-1. So I like where it's at right now. And Paul mentioned Cedric Mullins is coming back this week. So adding India and Mullins into a lineup that I could have used them last week, I guess better late than never.
And Paul.
Yeah, I think this was a massive, massive win for Bracken. For me, Randy Arozarena, Mullins, and Luis Robert are in the same tier of outfielder. So the fact that he got both of them for Robert, and then Cortez and Brian De La Cruz for Chad's fourth. I mean, I'm not sure the whole angle here that Bry was taking. I mean, I guess Luis Robert's been really good this year, and he's young, and I mean, I understand that part of it, but I mean, to me, this was one of the more lopsided deals that we've seen in this league. Yeah, I mean, I'll leave it at that, just because I don't want to start hurting feelings here. So, I mean, a Rosarena is really good, 6-point bat. Mullins is a borderline 7-point bat, and Cortez is a borderline 19, 20-point pitcher. Not to mention De La Cruz having a great year this year. So, really good trade for Bracken.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to get the thought process behind it for Bry. I'm assuming maybe it was to clear roster space, but at the same time, I mean, the value alone of Randy, Cedric, and Nestor. I mean, again, I mean, I'm a Yanks fan. Nestor, I don't know what he's going to be the rest of the season. It's just more the Randy Cedric part. I mean, those are two huge bats. I know Mullins has the injury concerns, but I mean, this is a guy. He already hit for the cycle this year. I think it was for Cody when he had him. I mean, Randy's been having a great year as well. And I know Robert, I think, is like a top 15, 20 bat right now. But that's just great value, I think, for Bragton. I think he definitely was able to get some good piece there. And I think the longest time also for Bryce, he's wanted that superstar on his team, and to add on to the bats, to add on to guys like Devers and Albies. And he got that in Robert, but maybe subtracted a little too many superstars in potentially Randy and Cedric. But we'll see how it all pans out this last part of the season. Next trade, you guessed it, Bragton is involved. Bragton traded away Dylan Cease for Junior Caminero, Kevin Parada, Jacob Berry, Titus 24 second.
I was working on this trade with Smell for like 2 weeks. Literally, like as soon as I got Cease, he put Caminero on the table, and we've been going back and forth. Originally, I wanted a pitcher back, and that was our holdup for a little bit. But I really wanted to get a deal done because Caminero was somebody I really wanted to get. And when he threw out, he said, just give me a list of prospects you like, and I threw out Parada and Berry and the draft picks. He just said, fuck it, I'll give you all of them with Junior Caminero to avoid having to throw in an arm. And I said, you know what, I think that's pretty fair. I went with that, even though I love Dylan Cease. I think Dylan Cease is a dog. I feel like getting a top 15 prospect in Caminero plus Parada I view as a top 30 guy, and Berry a fringe top 100 with 2 picks this year was something I couldn't pass up.
And Paul.
Yes.
Yeah, this one wasn't thrilling for me because I believe, the runner-up to get Cease. I thought I was really close. I thought I was going to make the deal, and then Smell came in 11th hour and stole him away. So at the time, I wasn't thrilled, but it ended up working out because I think we talked about it. Dylan Cease just blew the absolute fuck up this week, which wouldn't have impacted me. I still would have lost. But and then I think he pitched tonight. I think he had 7 walks tonight against the Yankees. So obviously, immediately not good, but long term, Cease is an ace. I think these last 2 starts notwithstanding. But at the same time, for Bragton, Junior Caminero is the top 5 prospect in my mind. Parada is probably top 50 to 60. Jacob Berry probably towards the end of the top 100. With those 2 seconds, easily luck out and land another top 100 prospect. So if you're looking at 4 top 100 prospects for Dylan Cease, that's probably about right. So Smell got what he wanted in that ace. It didn't work out for him because he ended up losing last week. But I mean, and Bragton got his big prospect pool, which he ended up trading later to land a nice player. So, but this deal in itself, I would say, pretty even both ways.
Yeah, I mean, we know what pitching is in this league. It's everything. So to get an arm, that's kind of what you have to pay, and especially someone like Cease, who has not had a good year by his standards. Tonight, he actually ended with 26 points after having 7 walks. The Yankees below, so he had, I think, 1 hit allowed and 6 strikeouts and the win. So, I mean, Cease, I think I agree with Paul. In long term, he's still an ace. Just having a weird year this year. The White Sox are complete poverty. So there's just a lot going against him right now. In terms of Bragton, I mean, you got a lot of prospect capital. Junior Caminero, I'm seeing on the list too. He is getting close to that Churio Holiday, level of prospect. I don't think he's fully there yet. He's getting very close. It's the way he skyrocketed this year. I think the haul you got back for him later in the week was great, which we'll talk about just a little bit. But I mean, at the same time, though, as good as the haul is, I mean, pitching is everything. I know Cease had a bad week this week. But if you do make the playoffs and you're going up against a team like Cody, Cease is kind of the arm you might have had to, maybe be able to have even a better chance of taking him down. But I get it. I mean, getting that home, I think was too good. It would be too good to pass up on just because you're getting Caminero and plus some really good prospects. I mean, I obviously love Jacob Berry, even though he's been kind of bad this year. and Parada, I think, is the number one Mets prospect right now. So makes sense for both sides. Mel gets the coveted arm. Bracton gets a haul. Let's move on to the next deal that we're going to discuss. It was a day later. Involved the Tita man. Tita finally got back a guy that I just can't get in this league. I guess I never will. Tita got back Adolis Garcia. Cody got Jordan Westburg, Trey Sweeney, and Wickelman Gonzalez. And Paul, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, this was an interesting one. Adolis Garcia, really good outfielder. Plays in the heart of the Texas lineup. In my opinion, the best or second best lineup in baseball. 30 years old. I guess that's a detractor, but obviously not for Tita. So he really good bat, and he paid Westburg, Sweeney, and Gonzalez. Sweeney's kind of a mid to low tier prospect, and then Gonzalez is probably about the same. But Jordan Westburg, obviously, I like Jordan Westburg a lot. In my mind, he can be that high 5 to 6 point bat as soon as the end of this year into next year. So it's another one where Tita got his outfielder and Cody loaded up on more assets that he thought that he would be able to trade at the deadline. Which
not much else to add. I like Westburg and Sweeney a lot, and Cody has
good trade both ways.
Surplus of outfielders, so trading an old dude like Garcia for Westburg and Sweeney, who I view as each top 100 guys and a worse, makes sense to me. It's a good deal.
Yeah, Adolis Garcia, I think, has the potential to maybe sway a playoff matchup. I think he's like he might be a top 10 bat at this point. Whatever, he's 30, he's going to die, whatever. Jordan Westburg, Trey Sweeney are really good. I love, obviously we know how good Westburg is. Trey Sweeney's a guy. I think Cody had him to start the year and then traded him and then got him back. I could be wrong on that, though. But Tita gets his guy. I have confirmed to the fact I'm never going to get Adolis, even though I've tried multiple times. So, Tita had a good week out of Adolis as well. And we'll talk about the rest of this package, what Cody did with it later on. Let's move on to 3 days later, I think was the next trade we're going to discuss. Let me find it. Excuse me. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Bry and Homko made a big deal we need to discuss. Bry got Brian Bello and Mikael Garcia.
Bry was actually talking
Nick Lodolo,
to me about
Carlos
this
F.
when it was happening
Rodriguez,
because he was nice enough to give me
Abimelec
the opportunity
Ortiz.
to
Bracton,
counter.
you can go.
Because I've been asking for Nick Lodolo for months because I'm just in my hunting all Reds phase where I just need to get all the Reds I possibly can. So I really like Nick Lodolo, but I like Brian Bello more. I was surprised when Bry was telling me that he had the opportunity to make this trade because I feel Brian Bello is without question better than Nick Lodolo right now. And I also like Garcia a little bit too, and not really familiar with either prospect, so I view it as a Garcia, a guy that Bry believes in for two. I'm afraid to say worse, but I'm gonna say worse. Two worse for a guy that Bry believes in and a pitcher upgrade. I feel like that's pretty good value for Bry. I like the deal a lot for him. So.
And Paul.
Yeah, to me, how I break this trade down is it's Garcia for the two prospects. Probably fair. I like Mikael Garcia a decent amount. I know I asked Tomko about him when he had him. Young third baseman for the Royals. I like him. I don't know if he'll be like a top guy, but definitely a good bench bat, good replacement guy. So this breaks down to Brian Bello for Lodolo, in my opinion. I said it on this podcast at the beginning of the year that Lodolo had that potential to be an ace, a fantasy ace. I still believe that. Obviously, he's been out for most of this year because I think he broke his leg. Was the injury. But fortunately, it doesn't have anything to do with his arm or his shoulder or his elbow or anything. So, you can heal from that and come back and be the same pitcher. If he can be, I favor Tomko a little bit on this. But Brian Bello is not a slouch pitcher whatsoever. 24 years old for the Red Sox. Has been pitching pretty well of late. I think has a chance to be that mid rotation to even possibly a number 2 starter in this league. So at the end of the day, if Lodolo can be the pitcher that I think he can be, I'll take Comco's side on this. But I mean, Brad did pretty well getting Bello, though, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time, I forgot what we said. I don't know when Lodolo was coming back, but I mean, when Lodolo's healthy, I think he's one of the nastiest pitchers in all of baseball. I think I read a story. I think batters are already starting to say that. He's such a good arsenal to him in terms of pitches and the way he's just been able to deliver them. Bello is a really good pitcher right now that really skyrocketed from the beginning of the season on that Red Sox team. So it made sense. Bry got more of a surefire bet for this playoff run in Bello as well. Obviously wanted to move on from Lodolo eventually. I thought maybe he'd hold on to him until the end because he sat on him for so long after the injury. But yeah, I think, sort of a win-win, and we'll see. I mean, if Lodolo comes back, it's going to help Pomko long-term. Obviously, Bello's still really young as well. But it really comes down to, I think, for me, what's Lodolo going to be when he comes back from injury. So now we have a couple of deals left, and they all went down during trade deadline day, which started off very bad. It was very boring, and then things got very spicy by midnight. So let's start. This one was, I think, in the morning or close to the morning. All right, so we're on deadline day, August the 6th. Hen and Cody made a pretty significant trade I think we have to talk about. Hen got Dansby Swanson. Cody got Harry Ford, Cade Povich, not sure how to say his name. And Paul, I'll let you go first again for this one.
Yeah, so this was a necessary deal, I think, for Hen, with Bo Bichette going down with his knee injury. He had a pretty gaping hole at shortstop, and he filled it with a really good shortstop, in my opinion, and Dansby Swanson. It cost him Harry Ford, who's probably a top 5 catching prospect. Really good out of Seattle, and then Cade Povich for the Orioles. Probably not going to be like an ace or anything, but definitely a solid pitcher that the Orioles will end up relying upon probably as soon as next year. But the 2-for-1, it was deadline day, and I'll say it a bunch. It was deadline day. A 2-for-1 that I think worked out both ways because Cody had the access.
I got to see Cade Povich play
and could
this
week,
week,
the
and he had a very good start.
Overall, a good deal
with me and my friend Jack Van Dyke. Shout out Jack. Sitting on the third baseline, getting to see Cade Povich. I think he threw 5 scoreless no-hit innings. So he did pretty well there, and seeing his name appear shortly after that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, Paul said it. Cody had an extra shortstop, and Hen had a need, so Cody got 2 guys that he liked. So it was a good deal for both, I guess. Fulfills a need and some good prospects going the other way.
Yeah, that made sense. Hen's was trying to load up for the postseason run, and then Cody, gets Harry Ford's a prospect I know he liked a lot, and then obviously Povich as well. Good to see you see him this week. Definitely a good narrative right there. For next trade, and this is for me. I had a very quiet deadline. I made a lot of my trades like the week or 2 before that I needed to get done. For me, the biggest thing was clearing roster space. I wanted some flexibility. I didn't know that Carlos Rodon was going to die again, which would have helped me anyway with flexibility. But I had an extra outfield to move, and the market was really bad after Teoscar Hernandez went for a worse. So, I'll just get my thoughts, and I'll let you guys go first. Connor stole Nick Castellanos basically for me for a worst and a 2025 third who's Hens. But yeah, I was practically begging people. Brad could even attest to it. I'm trying to move Castellanos. He's a top 70 bat this year, which is crazy. He had such a good year. Really slowed down, which is the reason why he was able to be moved. I wanted to, potentially keep a guy like Giancarlo Stanton and Springer, who are really starting to get going. I think are actually going to help me in the playoffs. if someone gets hurt. Castellanos was kind of in no man's land at that point, even though he's been having a really good season. But yeah, I'll still let Paul go first because next trade is Bracton. So Paul, what do you think?
So I value Caden Wallace a little bit above the worst. Definitely not a top 100 prospect or even top 150 probably, but he's decent third base prospect for the Royals. And then a 2025 third, that probably is the worst. But anyway, I mean, that's kind of how it goes. And it's kind of transcended this league that age is becoming a big deal. And I understand that there's 4 or 5 teams that are just looking now towards next year and beyond. But at the same time, you can't have a whole roster that's just filled with 24-year-olds, and you're going to have some older guys that are, high contributors because Castellanos, I don't think he's 6 points, but he's certainly a high 5-point bat.
He was at one point, I think.
Yeah.
He was like a 6.5 when I traded for him originally, and he did his job.
Right. So, he's definitely up there. He's definitely not, a slouch player, and he plays on a good roster, a good lineup in Philly. And so it is a little bit surprising that he went that cheap. I pondered sending a PM and making an offer too. I ended up going against it, but at the end of the day, players like this, and I think Connor's done a good job of identifying it. Players like these can win games. So at the end of the day, Connor, I think, did really well, and it's not like Nick Castellanos is going to fall off a cliff next year. He's only 31 or 30 or whatever he is. He's low 30s. So he's going to play baseball next year. So
yeah, I don't have much else to add to this other than
guys.
You were asking me if I had interest in Castellanos
for next year
at that price.
If that's the route
maybe I probably should have, but I mean,
and Bracton
making the deals I made later on in the day, I don't. Looking back on it, I don't regret it now. So, but I like to get. I just. Sorry, I was just saying I like the get for Connor.
Yeah, I mean, again, shout out to you.
So.
Sorry. Shout out to you. Wait, sorry, I keep cutting you off. You go. Okay. Yeah, no, shout out to you, Connor. That was the trade deadline day. I don't even know in the off season how much I would even got from him anyway. Just like you mentioned, the market is so messed up right now. Castellanos is having an unbelievable season. Wish I could have kept him. I didn't need him anymore once Judge came back. So, I still got two assets. I was originally going to ask for 3 because I think I gave up 3, and it was nothing that crazy either. But yeah, Connor got a good player. I just got some youth to potentially work with. Let's move on to the next trade. It was obviously a couple hours later.
I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I like 3 top 100 prospects and a
Drew
Gilbert
Gilbert, Alexander
replacement for
Ramirez.
Randy.
Tita
approached me about this and basically said pick any 3 prospects you want, really. And I got 3 prospects I really liked that really, really came in handy a little later in the night. But I like Jack Sawinski too. I'll probably hold on to him for a little bit. I kind of regret dealing him for a worse when I did, but Randy's a good player. Tito got a good one.
And Paul.
So this was the first voice deal because I know it was me, Tita, and Bracton were the first 3 on voice last night for the deadline. And I'm sitting there on voice and Tita just starts naming these names all for Randy Rosarena. And he said Sawinski, Jace Young, and Drew Gilbert. And I was like, okay, perfect. Stop there. Like in my mind. And then he goes, and Ramirez. And I was like, oh, no. And so that ended up being the deal. And I was right after, I was like, you shouldn't have said Ramirez. I think Bracton would have done it without Ramirez. I don't know. Oh, no. Okay. Well,
really?
In my opinion, at the end of the day, I like it for Bracton just because he got that extra prospect. Obviously, a Rosarina's dog. Pairing him with Adolis Garcia is going to do wonders for playoffs because they're both on playoff contending teams with the Rays and the Rangers. So, I get it. I get why Tita spared no expense. I think he could have. I think he should have at least. But obviously, Braxton getting Sawinski, who I like. He was on the tie as well. So, advantage Braxton long term, but short term, Tita gets a really good outfielder.
Yeah, it's kind of how I see it too. I mean, Randy's still young as well. I didn't really think you were going to flip him at that point. I know you were asking for a decent bit, but Drew Gilbert, obviously the big Mets acquisition in the Verlander trade. Sawinski, the replacement. Jace Young is, been soaring up prospect lists. Ramirez as well. Makes sense for both sides. And yeah, I really like what Tita's doing. Getting Adolis in him was huge. And yeah, he knows how to make some magic in the trade market. That's for sure. Let's move on to some huge trades to discuss, also involving Tita and Paul. So before we do the Paul ones, do Tita's. Cody and Tita.
Yeah, I was interested.
Tita got Sean Murphy.
in
Cody got Sonny Gray and Termarr Johnson.
I was interested in Adley Rutschman. I think I was the runner-up in that, so I was trying to get in on Sean Murphy, but before I knew it, he was already gone. So that was kind of unfortunate. But Tita got a really good player. Cody cleared a roster spot for the following trade, which we'll spend more time talking about. But as far as the pitcher goes, Sonny Gray is okay, I guess, but Termarr Johnson was a huge piece in something we're going to talk about a little bit later. So I see the logic on both ends, but I like it for Tito a lot if we're looking at just strictly players, not situation.
And Paul.
Yeah, my opinion, Termarr Johnson for Murphy, 1-for-1 would have been a decent deal. So then getting a guy like Sonny Gray, basically in my mind, for free. Obviously, I think Cody wins that deal. I get that Tita needs a catcher, and I get that he's going to help in the playoffs. But I wouldn't have traded Termarr Johnson. I think he could have gotten a better player, a better asset. But yeah, let's just get to the next deal.
Yeah, the one thing I will say before we do that is maybe it's the Braves tax. I don't know. But Sean Murphy's having a really good season. But yeah, Termarr Johnson, Sonny Gray, pretty good value back. And now the deal that Paul has been waiting to talk about, a franchise-defining move. Cody gets Adley Rutschman and Ezequiel Tovar. Paul gets Hunter Brown, Logan O'Hoppe, Jordan Westburg, Cade Horton, and James Triantos. Paul, time for your eulogy.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one to talk about. Adley Rutschman is my favorite player in baseball. When I got him a little over a year ago, I said it then, and I've said it multiple times since, that he'll retire on my team. Obviously not happening. I don't think I'll ever get him back. I might, but I know that I'm just going to get charged with an Orioles tax or just an Adley Rutschman tax that I probably don't want to pay. So it's probably a farewell to Adley here. It sucks, but I've kind of come to the conclusion that you can kind of piecemeal a little bit catchers. Obviously, Adley's the number one. I know JT Realmuto is right there too. And there's a couple other guys that are really good. But my plan at catcher comes with Logan O'Hoppe. I really like the kid. I know he had a pretty serious shoulder injury this year. That's why he's been out for most of this year. But I also have Tyler Soderstrom with the Angels. And my long-term plan is to just platoon those two guys and just play both of them. And if Soderstrom has to play first, then I can play them both at the same time. But catcher to me, I think, is a bit of a replaceable position. And so let's get to what I got. I mean, Hunter Brown, in my mind, is a fantasy ace. 24 years old, Houston Astros pitcher. Once they get Verlander and a couple of those older guys out, I think he's the ace of their staff. Over Framber, over Luis Garcia, over those guys. I think he's potentially as good as a McClanahan, as good as a Spencer Strider. I think he's in the same sentence as those guys. So when Cody threw out that name, I couldn't turn down at least thinking about that offer. But then you throw in Jordan Westburg, who I've long been after in this league. I really like him a lot. Again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I like him even better somewhere else besides Baltimore. But as long as he's in Baltimore, obviously I'll root for him, and obviously I can root for him twice now. And then with Cade Horton, a guy that, first round pick, top 10 pick in the draft last year. There were questions whether he could stand in the rotation or just become a reliever, maybe even a closer. I think those questions have been answered this year because he's been dominant for the Cubs Double-A team. I don't think he'll get called up this year, but definitely a candidate for early next year. Another guy I see is number 2 starter. I don't know if he'll be an ace. I don't think he'll be an ace, but definitely a 2 or 3 starter, which has serious value around here. And then Triantos kind of was a throw-in. I wanted a bigger piece than Triantos, but I think he's kind of a high floor player. I don't know about ceiling, but definitely I think will be a major league player in the next couple years. Giving up Tovar sucked, but I have Jackson Holiday, so I don't need him. So again, this was a tough trade,
Davis.
and Braxton's right. He was the runner-up on this. His offer was Skubal, Caminero, and who's the catcher, Braxton? Henry Davis. And I would have given up Adley and Brandon Williamson. Williamson was the sticking point for me in that. I just couldn't do it. And I was kind of proven right tonight with his best start of his career tonight. So I ended up giving him Adley to Cody, and now Cody has both him and Gunnar Henderson, and I'm sure he won't flaunt that in my face every day for the next
echoing
decade.
some of what Paul said.
So,
Paul,
yeah, I mean,
believe. Oh,
I
no,
like
he
it
doesn't. Never
for my
mind.
team.
I was going to say he reunited
really
the
sucks to
baby
give up a
Angels,
player.
but he didn't. I forgot that Dave.
Braxton, what did you think?
I love Logan O'Hoppe. He was going to be my catcher of the future until he got really hurt. I had to pivot, and when Henry Davis became available, I made that deal. But I really, really like him. I think if he recovers from his injury, he could be really special. And I like Hunter Brown, too, as another guy I used to own. And we talked about Horton and Westburg a little earlier. So I like the haul that Paul got, but Adley Rutschman's Adley Rutschman at the end of the day. Cody, it's a superstar at a catcher position. It's almost like a cheat code. It's like he produces like an outfielder in a catcher spot, which is kind of crazy. So really interesting get there. And I'm a big Ezequiel Tovar fan. I always have been. It's another guy I used to own. So I like the deal for both sides. Kind of stings because I was a runner-up here, and I really would have liked to have had Adley, Vlad, Ellie, and Volpe for the rest of their lives, but it's okay because I made some bigger deals at the end of it with some of the players I was going to give up. So it all worked out for everybody in the end, but good for both sides, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is a trade. Paul, I know when you put him on the block, I didn't actually think you were going to do it. I thought, at least, I mean, the asking price for me made sense because I really don't have a lot of youth
you were asked for some Hall of Famers for me, which again made sense because that's all I really had to offer. But I think in this, getting Hunter Brown, you mentioned it, he's got SP1 potential
Got Henry
on a very good
Davis.
Astros team. You talk about Logan
No,
O'Hoppe.
I traded him.
I didn't get
for
why
Henry
you sold
Davis.
him anyway, Bracton.
Yeah.
When you did, and I know he got hurt, but just as a dynasty asset, I
No.
still think he has quite a bit, of value. No, it was before you got Henry Davis, like before you even knew he was going to go. Oh, you did? Oh, never mind. I thought you got Henry Davis after. Well, anyway, he's still a good dynasty asset. I know you wanted Westberg, Kate Horton's dog, Trantos. I mean, Cody getting Adley. I know that when you did put him on the block, I feel like that was going to be the fit. I know Bracton were kind of close, but I kind of knew Cody was going to get him by the end of it. Hunter Brown is so big in this league, in the league that covets pitching. And again, a catcher's a catcher, but obviously Adley's the exception. He's the standard. Not going to look forward to probably facing him in the playoffs, but when I versed Adley last time, he was ice cold. I'm hoping he's ice cold again if I do face the Hot Rods in the playoffs. And Tovar is an interesting get as well. I mean, obviously, I think he's had a pretty decent season considering the team he's on, playing at Coors Field. Cody loves those Rockies that can mash at Coors Field. So just very, very big blockbuster for both. All right, we got, I think,
We
4
were
or
talking
5 more
about the
trades
big
to
week that Bradish
discuss.
had a little
Next
earlier,
big trade. This
but
one
Paul,
involved Chad and
or
Cody.
not Paul, Chad, his
got
patience
AJ
really
Smith
paid off.
Shawver,
I mean,
Roman
Kyle
Anthony,
Bradish
and
was
Michael McGreevy.
playing
Cody
really well pretty much all
gets
year.
Kyle
I'm
Bradish.
sure he got a million
Brad, you can
PMs
go
a day.
first.
Everyone in the league, myself included, asking about Bradish at some point in the year, and he held off to literally the last hour, and it paid off for him. I really like AJ Smith-Shawver. I feel like his future is very bright on a very good Braves team. And I mean, if we're talking this time next year and AJ Smith-Shawver's averaging more points than Kyle Bradish, I don't think any of us would be surprised. I think that's a big get for Chad, along with Roman Anthony, who's pretty highly praised in the prospect community, as well as McGreevy, who I guess has been receiving some similar high praise. I think this is an absolute home run for Chad long term, but Cody gets an arm right now in Bradish that's playing really well that's going to help him in his playoff push. So I see the logic for both sides, but really, really like what Chad did there, and the patience paid off in the final hour.
And Paul.
I don't really have to add. Braxton kind of nailed exactly what I was going to say. The only thing I will add is PM Chad earlier in the day about Bradish, just to get a feeler. I asked him what he would think about doing a Bradish for Taj Bradley deal, not 1-for-1, but like what he maybe could add. And he told me that he values Bradish over Taj Bradley, which just floored me. But I mean, I understand where he's coming from, and that Taj Bradley is in the minors right now, and Kyle Bradish is throwing out 22 points a game for the Orioles right now. So, I mean, clearly everybody has different values on players, but that was eye-opening to me.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. That is something I did not think you were going to say that. But yeah, I mean, I think Chad got a home run. AJ Smith-Shawver, another guy I let go too soon. I mean, next year with the Braves, I don't know if Max Fried's really going to go in free agency, but if he does or doesn't, I mean, he's going to be a part of that rotation most likely next year. Roman Anthony's been soaring up prospect lists. Michael McGreevy just has some name value in this league at the bare minimum. But yeah, Kyle Bradish does help Cody right now, and you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head with that one. So only a couple more left. Cody and Bracton now.
Yeah,
Cody
I did not expect this to happen. This
highly
was
coveted prospect.
Cody
Junior
being in a
Caminero,
roster crunch,
Bracton
me being
got
in
a
the right
call,
place at the right
Josh
time, I
Lowe.
guess.
Wow,
I got a PM,
Reed
and
Detmers
it
and
took
Tucker
about
Johnson.
2 minutes to
Again,
make this deal. He just said, hey, what do you want for Caminero? And I said, I would really like to get an arm And I was looking at some outfielders too. So he's just like, yeah, I'll give you Josh Lau, Reed Detmers, and Termar Johnson. And I'm just like, yeah, I kind of got to do that. That's pretty freaking good. And I mean, that's everything I could have ever wanted and more. So I'm really, really pleased with this. Definitely some pieces that will help in my playoff run here, or playoff push, I guess. We'll see if we can get through, because I have to beat Paul this week in order to do that. But Josh Lau and Detmers are certainly going to help with that. And as much as I like Caminero, this was too good to turn down, in my opinion.
And Paul.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with anything Braxton just said. I mean, on its face, value-wise, this is a absolute home run for Braxton. But this is what Cody does, okay? And I've known Cody for a long time, but this is what he does. Junior Caminero has the potential to be a star. I don't think any of the three players that Braxton got has that potential. And Cody just hunts for stars. That's what he does. I mean, he got Adley, who's a star. He has Gunnar Henderson, who's becoming a star. Wander Franco's a star. I mean, his team, he just wants to accumulate all the stars he can accumulate. And with Junior Caminero, I think he's potentially got another star. So he got what he wanted out of this. And when he's hunting for stars, he usually tends to get pretty liberal with his players, as long as they're not stars. So, obviously I like this deal for Braxton more. Josh Lowe, pretty good outfielder, still developing, still a little inconsistent. Same thing with Reed Detmers, 24 years old, still inconsistent, but has really high potential. And then Termar Johnson, same thing, top 30 prospect. So, clearly Braxton got good value here. But this is just what Cody does. He just hunts for stars.
That's a pretty good way to look at it, honestly. Yeah, I mean, Josh Lowe, I really like. I don't understand why he doesn't play every day. That's the way Tampa is, and it's all about matchups. But he should be playing every day, in my opinion. Detmers, again, has got the upside. He had the really good performance last season. I forgot, what was it, a no-hitter or a perfect, what was it? I forgot. Yeah, no-hitter. Yeah, and then Termar Johnson, we got him for like the 50th time, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, Cody potentially with a star. Braxton at the time looks like he got a haul. So we'll see who ends up better, with this deal in just a little bit. So only a few more left, and I know we didn't talk about it before the show, but I kind of changed my mind. I feel like we have to talk about this. This is a pretty substantial trade in the playoff run. Well, real quick, let's talk about the Hen Tita trade. Tita got Paul Goldschmidt. Hen got Justin Turner, Hector Rodriguez. Tita's 24 fourth. Paul, I'll let you lead off.
Yeah, Goldschmidt's a dog. And Turner's been pretty good this year too. I favor Tita because I think Goldschmidt's a better player.
Same thing.
I gave up
put
Rodriguez
a
in the
offer
fourth.
in for Goldschmidt.
Small
got
potatoes
the
in the
last
big
minute,
scheme
which
of
is
it.
unfortunate.
But this
he would
trade
have been
will
one
help
of the few old guys
Tita,
I would
I
have
think,
supported on my team. So
more than it will help.
that would have been interesting. But I agree with what Paul said. I mean, Hendog is supposed to be consensus top 3 team in the league, and he trades his first baseman away and didn't really get any upgrade pieces to help him on the run. Like, I don't think we're going to be debating that Justin Turner is not a better player than Paul Goldschmidt. So, I mean, I don't understand the logic if we're trying to win a championship this year and Hendog was a consensus top 3 team doing something like this 20 minutes before the deadline. I don't know. So.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, obviously, from my perspective, I'm trying to compete with Hen for a chip. He kept trying to get rid of Paul Goldschmidt. I know he's 35. He's not what he was last season, but I think he has Yandy Diaz. But like, it's Paul Goldschmidt. That guy can win you a playoff matchup. Tita really, I think, killed this deadline quickly for Randy, and he's got some dudes, and he already had some dudes before, so I'm really happy for Tita for this one. Justin Turner is a guy. I mean, his career is like before this season, it would have been a joke. Honestly, because Turner was he really had no value at that point. He got super hot with the Red Sox. Now he's playing insanely well. But again, you can talk about positions as well, like getting that position of Turner. But yeah, so good for Tita. Maybe Turner can really get light the lamp with Hen. Let's
Yeah,
do
I
two more
had a
trades,
lot of
and then we're finally
prospects. I
done
had
with the
like
trade
12
deadline.
prospects, and I was like, you
Bracton
know
got
what?
Andrew
I need
Abbott.
another
Hendog
pitcher
got
for
Drew
this
Gilbert, Tamar
playoff push.
Johnson, Jace
And
Young,
Andrew Abbott
Alexander
plays
Ramirez.
Pittsburgh this
Scott's
week. I'm
24
just gonna
second,
call
and
Hen
Bryce
Dog and throw a
24
bunch of shit
fourth.
against the wall and see what
Bracton.
sticks. I mean, that's the expression. None of these players were actually bad. I like all of them. I view all of them as top 100 prospects. But in no way did I think he would actually say yes to this, and then he did, and I was very surprised when that happened. But I mean, he got good players. I'm not saying any of them are bad. All of them are going to be good. But again, for a playoff push, I feel like Andrew Abbott would help the potential 3 seed more than a bunch of guys who literally won't play this year. So I was surprised that I was able to pull this off. But I don't not like the haul for Hen. I know Abbott's been struggling. However, like I said, I mean, having him versus not having him, if you're trying to win a championship this year, and the arms had as bad of a showing as they did against Tomko this week, again, I mean, I'm very happy I was able to pull this off. Yeah.
And Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Bracton. I like the prospect value that Hendog got, but why would he do that? Like, why is he trading Andrew Abbott, who's a 20-plus point pitcher, 22 years old, plays for a contending team? Why why would he do this? Like, and none of the 4 prospects that he got back are pitchers. So he got 4 bats. Well, I mean, they're good bats. Again, I agree. They're good bats. They're good prospects. But I mean, pitching is king in this league, and it's not breaking news to Hendog. Like, I don't know. This is another one that I'm not going to get too far into it because I'm not going to hurt feelings, but I just don't understand the logic. I mean, if I knew that Hendog was going to take 4 prospects for Andrew Abbott, I would have knocked on the door immediately. I didn't know that his price was going to. I didn't know he was going to move Abbott. So I mean, it's a great deal, I think, for Bracton. I'm not looking forward to playing Andrew Abbott this week in a make or break game. But yeah, I mean, again, decent value for Hendog, 4 top 100 prospects. It will help him in this offseason if he wants to build more for next year.
Yeah, I mean, this was a trade that happened in voice. I remember when it happened. I mean, I first was like, "Damn, that is a lot." Like, he even asked me, I was like, "That is a lot of value." Now that you guys said all that, I mean, it actually, I guess, didn't make a lot of sense. I thought at the time it did, just getting that much. Abbott had a really bad week. I forgot. I think it was 2 bad starts or 1 bad start. The Reds, are starting to cool off a little bit, so that might have been part of the reason. But yeah, this is a weird one. Now looking at it, but yeah, Bracton got his red. I mean, I love Drew Gilbert. I love Tamar Johnson. I'm not that big on the other 2 prospects. They're still have some name value, especially Young. At least in my opinion. But yeah, that is a
No, I
trade.
wanted to get. I
Maybe it
wanted to
will
give
end
up
up
a bunch of
haunting him
prospects for an
in the
arm,
playoffs. Maybe
and
it'll
that
haunt
that I
Bracton if Abbott
and if
blows
he
up
had
like he
said
did this
anybody
week.
on
But
majors, I don't know
I
whether I would
mean,
have done it. I just
I guess
wanted to
maybe
see
you
if
could
I
have
could. I
gotten
just
at least
wanted to
one
see if I
arm
could
back,
add
but
an
I don't know what
arm
arm Bracton would have
15
gave
minutes
up.
ago, take a shot in the
Actually, you
dark,
probably would have given up a
and
big
see
arm
what
for Abbott,
happens.
right?
But
You
and
wanted
it
a
paid
red.
off. I mean, maybe JP France if we're
Eh.
talking hypotheticals, but I mean, I'm glad it didn't have to come to that. So no, no,
I think with your Reds love, if it
not
was
with
like
all
one or
that
two of these
prospect
guys
capital.
and
No,
maybe one of those arms, it could have been a possibility because you've wanted Abbott for like months.
no,
So
no, that defeated the purpose of what I was trying to do. But that's
what
yeah,
what about like Josiah Gray? I feel like you
yeah.
could take Abbott over Josiah Gray. No, I'm not saying with all of them, but like if it was maybe one or two of these names and then him, we'll see. All right. Well, you got him, so that's all that matters. One more trade to discuss before we preview, and then we're done. Tita Connor was the last trade of the deadline. Tita got Miles Mikolas and Willie Adames. Connor got Jeremy Pena.
Yeah, Mike
Paul, I'll
Mikolas
let
has
you
been
go
getting
first.
tossed around a
Miles
little
Michaelis
bit.
doesn't
And yes, I
fit with
botched
what
his
Connor's
name on
trying to
purpose
do.
because it's funny.
Jeremy Pena
What do you
does.
call it?
25-year-old
I like
shortstop on a
Pena
good
a
team.
lot. Like Paul said,
I
young
like the deal for
shortstop on a
Connor.
good team.
I mean, Tita
But
did
I
fine,
mean,
but I like the
wouldn't
deal
be
for Connor.
surprised maybe if
And Brian.
Adames gets bounced for Turang or if he gets moved around a little bit. So maybe he doesn't. Maybe he moves off the shortstop position in general. So I like Pena better than Adames, and I guess Mikolas getting thrown in there is whatever. 2 minutes before the deadline, Connor just wanted his guy, so can't blame him.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, I mean, Connor secretly had a really good deadline. I mean, he got Castellanos from me for free. Jeremy Pena is a guy I love. I know he's been inconsistent. He's a guy I wanted actually in the beginning of the season. Could not get him from that dude. I think Lamar was his name when he was in the league. Just was like, nah, I'm not trading him. I was like, okay, bud. So good to see Connor getting, a shortstop of that caliber. I mean, Mikolas is going to help Tita in the playoffs potentially. We'll see Willie Adames. I think he's had him like 10 times, so we'll see what happens with that. But Tita also had a good deadline outside of this deal, so it's not that huge of a deal for him, but good get for Connor. That wraps up the deals. Unfortunately, we'll no longer hear deals until after the season.
Off to a
The
pretty
trade
good
deadline
start
is over.
today. I didn't know
So
how
now
it was
the
going to
last part
be
of the show, we're
with
going to
Paul
speed
having
run
5
through
starts. One of them
previews
ended up getting
of Week
rained out.
18. We have 2 weeks
And
left before
Drew
the
Smiley
Yoks.
went negative as I
We got to
predicted
start
last night
with
in
the elephant
voice.
in the room, the
So
Larks and the
that's
Tides.
good.
So
I do think I'm going
I'll
to
let
beat
Bracken
Paul
take the
this
stand
week. I mean, I'm
first.
not going to go on and say I'm going to lose a must-win game like this, but getting 32 from Sandoval tonight was huge. Getting 22 from Dunning tonight was good, and 16 from stream relievers, making up for the 45-point Brandon Williamson start and 44-point Pablo Lopez start. My bats are playing well to start, and winning it all at the end of this first night was something I wasn't expecting. So I'm off to a good start, I feel like.
And Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree with Bracton. I don't think that I expected to be down 2 points after today. It was 4 starts to his 2 starts, so I'm already down in starts. But my silver lining at this point is my bats really didn't even play today. Seattle was off today, and that's 2 of my better bats with France and J-Rod. Plus, Alex Verdugo didn't play today. Plus, Salvio Perez didn't play today, who I got from Tita at the deadline. So, I mean, that's my saving grace. I think at this point, it's what I'm holding on to. Plus, my relievers got 0 points, and hopefully, Duran will get a few saves. Hopefully, the Cubs will get a save or two, and hopefully, my bulk relievers and Fujinami and
To add to that really quick,
we'll get some
to add to that really
I
quick,
mean, I'm going to
think
pick
Paul's
me.
right. It is going
I'm
to
not
come
gonna
down to
pick
Sunday,
Bregman.
even with
I
this
actually do
decent
think I have
start
a decent chance to
today,
win,
and I think
despite
that
what happened today.
Bregman, India, and Mullins back is gonna really help.
But I mean,
in
it
doing
comes
that.
down to this,
It's going to
and
be a close one.
I think it's going to come
good
down
luck
to
you, Paul,
Sunday,
the rest of the
and
way.
it's going to be
fun.
exciting.
Oof. All right.
And I get Trevor Story back tomorrow, so that's going to help me as well. But good luck to you too, Braxton.
Well, so this is awkward. I have to pick between you two.
No pressure.
I know I value my friendships, both you guys. All right, I'm gonna say this. I had a different answer before today, but I believe in God, but I don't know what sort of voodoo magic Bracton's already pulling with Patrick Sandoval getting 32 in his start. I thought that dude was gonna get lit up like a Christmas tree against a good Giants team. Paul, I like your team better, but there might be something out of your control right now that's going on with the Larks, so I'll probably just slightly lean the Larks for this week, just because I don't know what sort of voodoo magic Bracton's pulling over there.
I mean, I'm also the unluckiest person in this entire league.
Literally, bro, you are. So honestly, that's part of it. Like, so you're gonna lose by like a point or something off like Wilmer Flores like hit by pitch. It's gonna happen. Like, it's just how it is.
Wouldn't shock me.
So, but I mean, I'm rooting for chaos. Honestly, I'm rooting for a fun, for me as a bystander, like within 3-point matchup. But yeah, Bracton is voodoo magic. I'm gonna lean just slightly towards for this week. I guess. Yes.
Yeah, you do have a good team, Braxton.
Yes. And I will say your bats have gone a lot. I mean, your bats are good at this point. At first, and even with Volpe being mid, haha, funny. At least right now. Getting Mullins, who he's older. I'm saying he's 28, but he is good. India, like getting those guys back really is huge. And getting Abbott, now that I really think about it, it really helped you because that's a start, because I was like, Paul got Hunter Brown.
You're gonna win by a lot.
The guy who got Hunter Brown, but
Abbott's
been good outside
it's 87 to 53 right now, but
but yeah,
be that much.
Your voodoo magic might work, so we'll see. Next
in
matchup on tap, we'll just get mine out of the way because I'm on the pod. Me versus Chad. I guess Brack, you can go first. And Paul.
The question here is, are you going to double them up? I mean, that's my question. But Cole Ragans had 41 tonight for Chad, so he's not. I'm certain he's not going to hang around. But to me, the question is, are you going to double him up? I'm saying no, but it won't be far off.
Well, I mean, at this point, for where I'm at, I clinched the one. Kind of weird, like, being undefeated going into the playoffs is such a bad luck charm. Like, I mean, Cody, look at what happened to him last season. I'm still going to try to win both weeks. I'm going to try to score as many points as I can. Garrett Cole actually only had 6 points tonight. Oh, maybe he's washed. Yeah, it's like, I'm just trying to, again, score as many points as I can. If I double them up, it is what it is. I can imagine Chad, like, as he's looking at his computer, he's, like, on his phone at the same time, just writing down all the picks he has and just giggling like a little schoolgirl, like, haha, look, I have every pick in this year's draft. Like, I wouldn't even set a lineup if it was him. I know he will. He's a very good owner. But, I mean, he's got the picks. He's not worried about trying to win this week, or, like, he's so set for the future. I mean, I think he's obviously going to try to win, but like, he's beyond set for what he's doing going forward, and I want to keep rolling. So next matchup on tap, very surprising already. The score, the Tampa Tarpons up 105-28 over the Clearwater Beach Dogs. I'll let Paul go first for this one.
Yeah, I think this is the beginning of the end a little bit for Hendog. And I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I really am not. But, I mean, I don't know what Hendog did at the deadline that made him a better team. He gave away pitching, he gave away hitting, and he got prospects back, which, I mean, obviously, I'm the king of prospects, so I'm not going to talk trash about prospects. But if I had a team that was near Hendog's, I wouldn't have done that, especially this late in the season. Like, again, so I'm picking Jaime. I mean, I think he has a good start. The question is he going to be
I
able
was
to
going
get
to
to
pick
10,
Jamie
11, 12
before
starts?
this week even
If
started
he does,
because
then
just the
I
way he
think he
came out
wins by
against
maybe
me.
even 100.
I mean, the usual
I don't
suspects
know.
are already out
I don't know if
tonight.
Hen's
Freddie
going to be
Freeman
able
and
to
Will
get
Smith
600
combined
this
for
week.
18 again. Bobby Witt with another 8. Corey Seager with 8
But we'll see.
in the
I'm going to pick Jaime.
utility. Like, his bats are playing great.
And Brackton.
And then Gavin Williams, screw me, I guess. 12 Ks and a quality start in 7 innings for 49. Like, I agree with Paul. Beginning of the end, Hendog, man. I'm not. John Height, you said surprising to start. I might just say that it might be 150 points for Jamie to win by this week. So.
Wow, what a turn! I mean, okay, for the longest time, I've said this. I mean, I've always been picking Hen because he hasn't given me a reason to not pick him. Last week was very concerning. There was some bad luck involved. There was some bad luck with Strider. Just for some parity, I think Hen still has a shot in this one. I know he didn't upgrade at the deadline like he probably should have. It only benefited teams like me and Cody and Bry and all these other contenders. But I still like his pitching. I mean, I know Strider got lit up like a Christmas tree tonight, but some of the matchups this week as well. I think Wheeler's going against the Nationals. He's got some pretty good matchups. I'm going to still lean Hen. I know that I guess that's an unpopular pick now. I mean, obviously, Jaime's offense is absurd. I mean, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Witt, Acuna, who Acuna only had -1 tonight. Maybe you should trade him. Bryce, Tatis, the list goes on and on.
Don't get swept.
But the way, at least right now, if Juan Soto's continuing what he's doing, Jordan Alvarez, Carroll, all those guys.
You just said it too.
I think if this was 2 weeks ago, everyone would be picking Hen. So I'm not going to get off the Hen train just yet. I'll stick with Hen for this week. But yeah, I mean, if he loses this week, then I seriously have to consider picking against him next week. But we'll see what happens because obviously. Oh yeah, I forgot that's next week. Ooh. Ooh. All right, but yeah, I'm gonna. No, I said if he loses this, I might have to reconsider. But yeah, I mean, it depends. If he loses bad this week, then I really will have to reconsider. But I mean, right now I'm still picking him over you. Sorry.
Cody's in the same position that I was in. Smell had 2 more starts than him today, and he's only down by 2.
To discuss.
And those 3 starts consisted of 26-point Dylan Cease, 56-point Freddie Peralta, and 29-point Kodai Senga, and Cody's only down by
131 to 129.
Outstanding.
And
That's outscoring Snell by 70. And a decent Logan Webb start today. Cody's going to be just fine, and he's going to win.
And Paul.
Yeah. This is going to be closer, I think. But I'm going to pick Cody. But this is. I mean, Smeld still has a like 0.001 chance at the playoffs. He needs a lot of things to happen, I think. But 56 tonight from Peralta goes a long way. I'm gonna pick Cody, but I think both teams are around 700 to 800 here.
Yeah, I mean, look at Freddie Peralta. My God, so much shit. I mean, I shitted on him all season. The dude has had 56, 30, and 46 his last 3 starts. But yeah, I'm taking the hot rod. So I'm picking him against everyone at this point except for myself. The hot rods are, I think, going to be blazing going into the playoffs. But yeah, I think it will be a little bit closer, but I think Cody's going to pull away at some point, just because he's really upgraded some areas of need that he needed. Getting a guy like Bellinger a little while ago was so huge. But yeah, and Pete Alonso at 34. So I mean, he's a guy. When he's off, he's off. And when he's on, he is a man among boys. Next matchup on tap. Not very surprising. It's only been a day, but Scott currently ahead over Tita. So the Flying Squirrels ahead over the Sounds, 48-16. Paul, you can go first.
Yeah, I'll pick Tita here. I know he's got to a slow start. I know he's chirping his own team a little bit in
So
the main
will I,
chat.
only because I don't think
but-
Scott gets the start minimum.
I mean, negative 23 out of Estes tonight's pretty rough. But I mean, Tina has a good team. Like, he has good players. He has good arms. He has really good bats. I think he improved his bats substantially this week. So I'll roll with Tita.
And Bracken. Yeah, I'm gonna roll with Tita as well. The Tita man. But yeah, I mean, Scott, again, a lot of good stuff for the future. Tristan Casas is really emerging.
I don't think that lead lasts.
Brett Beatty will get
I
option
think that
right
Homko's
today,
going to
that
come
probably
back and win.
help his chances
It's
as
only
well.
been
But
a
CJ
day,
Abrams will have a
and
good
Connor
week.
has one more
All right, I
had
think
one
we
more start
have
than him,
2 more left.
than
Yes,
Homko.
2 more left to discuss.
Again, James
before we wrap
Outman,
things
though,
up.
18 points today.
Connor
Bryce
currently
Trank,
ahead,
19 points
71 to
today.
34 over
Good for
Homko.
Connor's young bats
Bracken,
early,
you can
but I
go,
don't think
first
it'll be
one.
enough. I think Homko comes back and wins.
And Paul.
I'm going to take Connor. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take Connor. I like his bats a ton. And I think his pitching is decent enough that he can take down Homko. There's a lot of guys on Homko's team that are good, but just like Yuri Perez today, only getting 7. I think there's some regression coming. Like Oviedo had 70-some points last week. He starts against Cincinnati this week, so I think there's regression coming there. And plus, there's some guys there's some pitchers that Connor has that I think are going to be not terrible this week, like Carrasco. I gave him Liberator. I think Liberator has a chance to at least be a decent pitcher, and he gets Tampa this week. It's a tough matchup, but I'm gonna take Connor, but it's gonna be. This is, to me, I think this will be the closest at the end of the week. Closest matchup.
You stole my my thought process a little bit, Paul. I was going to take Connor anyway as well. You mentioned the bats. I mean, I just gave him again Nick Castellanos for free. I really like what he's doing with his bats, and I mean, he had Pena. Terang had a good night tonight. I gave away Outman to him for free. I've given a lot of people for free to Connor, and they're really starting to turn it around, which is kind of scary. Even McNeil had 8 points as well. I think for Homko, too, I think a guy like Gleyber Torres, I think he's going to cool down a little bit this week. He was red hot last week. Nemo has been in a little bit of a cold streak, but I mean, he still got guys. I mean, what's his name? Estrada's been good. Michael Harris is Michael Harris. He's been really saving the second half of the season.
Yeah,
But
Bry's
yeah,
is my
Yuri Perez
sleeper
only
pick to
7.
win the
The
league
pitching is
right now.
close.
Like, I
But
think
yeah,
that
I'm gonna
he
roll with
has a
Connor
very
here.
legitimate chance
One more
to make the
matchup
Final Four
to
at least
discuss.
and to be in that
Yeah,
conversation.
this is
So
the
I don't
last
see
one.
him
Bry
dropping this
versus
game,
Dave.
but I
Bry
don't think he's
and the
going to
Vibes are
get
up
the 3
80
seed
to
because,
53
as
over the
Hen's
Rochester
math
Red
says,
Wings.
Bry needs
Braxton,
to
you can
win
go
out.
first.
Jamie needs to lose out, and I don't think he's going to lose to Hen this week. And then Hen needs to lose to me next week, and Tita needs to lose to either Scott or Paul. So Brian needs a lot of help to get the 3 seed. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think he will solidify himself as the 4 or 5 seed with a win this week against Dave, and he already is off to a good start today. Even though he's got 2 start. Seth Lugo kind of hurt him today, but it made up for it with streaming. Will Smith and Eric Swanson got 13 points each, so kind of canceled it out, which is the benefit that streaming can give you. So we'll see what happens, but I like Bry to win this week.
And Paul.
I think Dave's just too injured. He's got Buxton on the IL. He's got Josh Jung on the IL. I think his bats are just too banged up, and his pitching is not going to be able to overcome what Bry's going to be able to bring. So I'll take Bry pretty handily this week.
Yeah, I'm going to take Bry as well. Bry's team is scary. No, he's pretty down on his team sometimes. I really don't get it. He has Luis Robert now.
Yes, sir.
On top of a really good team. And Dave's team is just bit with the injury bug. And it should still be an interesting one, but yeah, I think Bry's going to pull away at least in the second half of the week. So that finally concludes the previews for this week. Let's go straight to the final thoughts. Paul, I'll let you go first.
Braxton, it comes down to this week. We'll see what happens. I'm content either way. If I lose to Braxton, it is what it is. I like my team long term. And I'll also take this opportunity to say my final farewell to my favorite player, Adley Rutschman. It's tough to move him. I have his jersey. Favorite player in baseball, all that. But at the end of the day, I kind of looked at it and I said, pitching is king here. I don't have enough pitching, and it's really hard to get. And I identified Hunter Brown as the guy for me.
Yeah, I'm with Paul there. It's all come down to this. We've been battling it out for 17 weeks. This is basically a playoff game for the both of us here.
You never know, I guess.
I think the scenarios say that I'm in with a win and Paul is in with a win.
So I'm really looking forward to this week, and I'm really looking
week,
forward to seeing how the seeding is going to shake out.
It's a little complicated, but regardless, it's important that to get a win this week for both of us. So it should be competitive. It should be fun, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. And I'm interested to see how the seeding went through too. But I just want to say a quick shout out to everybody in this league for a great deadline. This is one of the best deadlines I've ever been participated in. Right up to the last minute, there were deals. The last hour was crazy, and we can never replicate that anywhere else. I mean, that's really special. And I'll do like kind of what Cody usually does if he was here, and just say that the league's in a really great spot. And as an LM here, I'm really encouraged by pretty much every single owner here with what they were able to do this deadline season and how we're stacking up going into the playoffs. So good job, everybody. Keep it up. And the end of the year here should be really fun to watch for everyone.
Yeah, I mean that's a definitely one points to bring up. One thing I'm gonna say, Bracton, to you, pinned a message that I'd said a long time ago that I'd be surprised you finish as a 500 team, and I will say, I'm a man of my word. I'm a man who owns up to things. When I said that your team was not a 500 team, I mean it'd be stupid to say it was. To the point of where you've taken this team since then, it's
Yeah,
obviously safe to
I'm
say
not there yet, and I
you've
was 4-0
surpassed
at the
that. So
time
I
of
want
that
to say,
posting, so it's okay.
obviously that was a receipt, but the receipts were justifiable to where your
if I
team
beat
was then
Paul and
to
Hannah,
what it is now.
500,
It's kind of
yeah.
crazy to see you and
So
Paul have a matchup of
I
this
could make a
caliber. Shout
playoff
out
with
to the
a
schedule
500
makers for
record, yes,
putting this
but
towards the end of the season. Definitely cool to
it's
see
whatever.
two
Doesn't
LMs duking
matter.
it out for a playoff spot.
So
Sort of
He's
funny,
not
but
500 yet, by the way. He's not there yet.
well, if you beat Hen, you'll be if you beat Hen, you'll be 500, right?
Well, if he beats me, he'll be 500.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, anyway, but yeah, big shout out to all you guys. This was so much fun. This league's unbelievable. I think we have a very long, tenure in this league, going forward with everyone's commitment and dedication each week. Hopefully, we still talk to each other now. There's no trades, so let's keep the main chat flowing. And yeah, that'll do it for this week's edition of the Base on Balls podcast. Big thank you to Bracton and Paul for we figured out how to do this trade deadline episode. I think it turned out pretty well, and apologize for any deals that we may have missed that you kind of want us to talk about. I thought we did a pretty good job though covering everything. But yeah, be sure to tap in next week. We'll be talking about a lot of things, playoffs, and whatever goes on at the end of this week of Week 18. I've been your host, John Haight, and have a great rest of your day.